Welcome back. Big shout out to all the new subscribers. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this content. Shout out to the OGs that have been with me here for a little bit. I appreciate everybody in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. I see you're getting into the metrics. I'll be getting back to all you guys in the comments, but I've been a little pent up, so I just had to get some stuff out there. Today I'm looking to go over preseason, how to handle the preseason. Obviously, we're going to talk some advanced metrics today and do a little case study. And I'm going to talk a little bit of deep league options, look at some deep league player pool. But first, let me cover a couple things. Obviously, we want to focus on auction drafting. And I touched on a topic in the last video, and I watched it a little bit. I was like, I don't know if that really made sense. So I want to touch on it again. It was that idea of umbrella drafting, and I use the term umbrella, but I'm thinking of using the term canopy drafting. And I want to just dig into that a little bit and how to use that in your auction. So on my sheet, I've got prices for players. I've been in 3 auctions. I've seen players go for a variety of prices. Some of them have ranges. And so the canopy at first, okay, everyone's available. I got all the players, Trey, Acuna, they're all up at the top. And then it kind of it fades down and the prices are coming down. And what I'm trying to say with this canopy drafting is that it's almost like a game of Jenga. You know in Jenga when you push a block and you go, oh, no, that wasn't good. What I'm saying is with those top players, if I know that JD can go for upwards of 55 and I want to push the value around a little bit and you see JD 44, the bidding slowing down, you go, you know what, JD 45. Just push that piece up a little bit. Knowing the pieces you can push on, you can always push a little on Trey. No one's getting off of Trey at $41. You can push a little bit. And if you push up the top tier of the canopy, if you can get guys paying 60 for bets, there's eventually going to be some guys that their value slips down. So in a way, maybe I don't want anybody expensive. I want no part of any $50, $40 players. And I just want to wait for little mistakes, everyone overspent, and they kind of start to fall through the canopy. And the canopy continues. So let's get rid of the $40 and $50 players. Okay, now we're down in 30. We're in 25. But there's still players in here that other guys are hungry for that you can push a little bit. You can tweak it a little bit. And what's going to happen is that as you get that little bit of overspending, guys can fall down. So what I'm finding, the first auction I told you guys, I didn't bid up anything. I wasn't messing around. But I'm starting to get more comfortable with the values. I can push a guy up. I can say, let's talk about Andujar. I wanted him at 12. And I was push. Oh, wait a second. All of a sudden, we're at 20. I hadn't really valued him like that, so I didn't want it to snowball through my auction. But now I know I can edge him up a little bit there. And so there's a difference between edging up, but then knowing to get off. Knowing to, oh, no, that's too much. That's too much. So I hope that gives you a little bit of sense of working with this canopy, starting to assess guys that you can edge on a little bit, but being able to let it fall down. And then the major twist in the draft strategy, which I'm not really seeing out there, is nominating your players and buying inexpensive players when a lot of money is out. And it's a little bit tricky. You can be scared. You can go, oh my God, there's so much money out here. If I nominate Matt Olson, is he going to go for 35? Well, probably not, because in the auction room, you've got the little price, and there's an average price, and for some reason, we just seem held to that. That's like auction room ADP. We just seem a little bit invested in, oh, look, it says his max value. He's going for about $46. Or Matt Olson, it says he's going for 18. Once people get to 19, 20, 21, 20, they start to go, wait a second. The auction is telling me he's too expensive, and they'll eventually get off. So I don't think you're at that much risk to nominate and throw your cheap players in. But this is what's happening. It's hard for me to describe. You buy a cheap player early. So while guys are used to spending 30 and 40, all the first picks, they're huge. They're the high-end guys. You're going, oh, you know what? I'll take a second-tier guy. I'll take Rougned Odor for $6. I'm okay with that. And somehow it's weird. You're filling a roster spot, so you get a bump because you bought a player. Like, you own a player now. Everyone else is seeking players. And you bought them earlier, but because you didn't spend $45 on your first player, you spent a cheap amount. There's some kind of value that occurs there. And so what I'm finding is you can really extend your draft and extend who you're paying for, like you're realizing you're having trouble getting to those $12 and $15 values late in the draft when you're running out of stack, just nominate him and go for him. The only thing I will say is I could see someone, I'm not sure, starting to defend against this because they see me going, Bauer. I nominate him and then I just buy him. And then it comes back to me again and I do it again. Bueller, nominate him and buy him. And so maybe someone's starting to notice like, oh, he thinks he's going to nominate his player and just go buy him and get some pushback and try to run me up. But I'm sure that this kind of intermediate mixing in cheap and expensive players, using your nomination not only to buy you time, but to get players in there and have you apply your money early in the draft. We're going to look at this strategy some more. I'm going to exploit it. I'm going to completely exploit it. I'm going to nominate and pay for like late players that I'd be okay with all throughout the draft. And then what I'm saying is use your canopy and go, oh, you know what? That guy's 28 for Soto for 25. That's where you overspend. Overspend when you see the things fall through the canopy, but use the rounds to fill in your lineup. Let me just go get Hampson right now. Why wait? Oh, he went for 10. Okay. You guys are spending $40 a player. So that's a strategy. I just want to touch on that. Hopefully that clarified it a little bit, being able to push and get off stuff. Because if you keep pushing, 5 here, 5 there, 4, 5, all of a sudden that's $30 just gone from the auction that you might be able to capitalize on. We got to talk Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper goes to Philadelphia. I'm going to tell you guys how I dove into this a little bit. You got park factors. ESPN has park factors, which kind of show how a park plays. So from a strictly park factor perspective, actually Washington, the Nationals park was pretty favorable. It was favorable for runs, and it was favorable for home runs. And Philadelphia is actually lagging a little bit behind it in the park factor analysis by a couple numbers, but I'd like to dig in a little deeper. You can go to your baseball savant, go to Bryce, career stats, down a layer, visuals, and it shows you where his balls are landing, where they landed in that field. And so I checked out, and then I go and I compare it to just park dimensions, and I'm looking at Bryce, his old park, 377, 402, 370. He's coming into Philadelphia. The park's a little funny. It's got angles in it, but basically it's 374 to 385 to left, 401, 369. So Bryce really isn't getting a benefit. The difference is Bryce is pulling most of his home runs. He's a lefty. He's pulling them out to right field. The right field wall was 370 in Washington. It's 369 in Philly. He's not gaining a bunch of cheapies the way Machado is going to be losing his cheapies. You've got to talk about batter's eye making the adjustment. He stays in the same division, so he doesn't have to learn a whole bunch of pitchers. I'm continuing to buy Bryce with confidence in all leagues early and often. I think he's going to deliver you 40 home run power. I've mentioned this before, but I'll just touch on it. You go to his zone contact rates, and this is a guy that was BABIP unlucky, and his zone contact was the worst of his career, 26 or 27. It's hard for me to explain it. His chase contact went down a little bit. I think Bryce was pressing. I just think he was pressing. He knew that the money was on the line. Honestly, I think it hurt him. I think that they looked at him and said, Bryce, look at these numbers. Machado's a better hitter than you. We can't pay you more than Machado. And that's why Bryce is making less on an annual basis. Maybe Bryce lost a little bit of confidence and he wanted to take the deal for the rest of his life as opposed to a short term and a re-up. But that's Bryce's decision. He's going to be a lock. I will touch on JT Realmuto real quick. His partner, some of the collateral damage. Bryce going to Washington is a boon for Realmuto. And obviously I don't want to pay up for catchers. I'm not paying $30 for him in an auction. But if you stumble into a situation and you catchers drive you crazy, I think you got to trust Realmuto. Because where, Bryce and the field dimensions didn't change that much, Realmuto is looking at his old park, 386, 407, 392. Now he's back to 374, 401, 370. I looked at Realmuto's hitting visuals, and he's going to get all sorts more cheapies. He was ripping doubles in Marlins Park, that are just going to be home runs. I think we might be looking at 30 home run power. The other thing with Realmuto, oh my God, fly ball revolution. Launch angle for the past 4 years, 9, 9, 9, 14.5. He is elevating the ball. He's seeking power. And even if you look at the cluster, he likes to yank balls down the left field line. And I think that the corner of the field is going to be in about 5 feet. He might be getting some cheapy kind of ropers down the line. So Realmuto is going to be a stud. I think he might be 30 home run power. The contact rates, the hard hit, they're legitimate enough for him to, go where he's going. I think if you want to pay up, I'm not going to pay something ridiculous, but he's going to benefit from Bryce coming in. I had a couple more things for you here. This is a zone. I noticed a zone contact discrepancy, and I'm glad you guys are making me a better fantasy player. I'm going in a little bit deeper. I want to make sure that I'm sure about some stuff, or I want to clarify when I'm not sure. And this kind of came up because I'm listening to Sleeper in the Bust. I got to vent a little bit. And they were just trashing Alberto Mondesi. Just trashing him. Just no one wants to do it. Too risky. That plate profile is so suspect. Like, I think he's going to get sent down. And they did it last year with Acuna. Same thing with Acuna. No, you're not sure. When is he going to come up? All right, so they're doing it with Mondesi. And I'm listening in. And they have a guest. They have Ellen on as a guest, and she's a Phillies fan. And they're like, Ellen, what do you think about Mondesi? She goes, well, after everything you guys said about Mondesi, I'm not going to touch him. And that's what's happening out there. That's what's happening to everyone. And I want to say, well, guys, what about Mondesi's 43% hard hit rate on Fangraphs? Or what about him being top 10 in sprint speed? You guys don't want to point that out? Do you like his 7.1 barrel percentage? They left out all those numbers, so I had to dig in. And this is a follow-up after they just hyped David Dahl. And you've heard me, I've referred to, I am just completely off David Dahl. And when I hear these experts, writing players, I've got to go back and I've got to see, well, what, are we sure? What do I think? So here's my case study as I dig in, because I want to be able to assess a player. We got to look at all the metrics. And a discrepancy came up, and it's like, oh my God, the contact rates on Baseball Savant are different than the contact rates on Fangraphs. What are you guys doing to me? So just be careful if you're going back and forth and you're moving quickly. You can't grab a Baseball Savant contact rate and then just compare it to a Fangraphs because they're off by about 3%. There's some things that are consistent, but there's just a little gap, and so Baseball Savant seems to be a little bit more stringent with what they're calling contact rates or whatever. So it's just something to be aware of. I went back and forth. It's just a sliding scale. It's not like some big things jumped out. But basically, Mondesi and Dahl are very similar hitters. And this is Baseball Savant. 35% hard hit for Mondesi, 37% fly ball, 37% O swing, 45% O contact, 79% Z contact. I know I just ran through those, but go to his player page, check out those numbers in there. And then I jump over to Dahl, basically the same numbers, 37% hard, fly ball at 39.6. Here's the difference. Dahl's O contact, 63%, a little bit better than Mondesi. He's going to go get it a little bit better. But his zone contact, 78.4, ooh, that's down a little bit. Mondesi at a 10.5 barrel percentage versus Dahl at a 9.3 barrel percentage. So Mondesi making that little bit sweeter contact. Mondesi's exit velo around 87. Dahl's at 88.7. Okay, he's hitting it a little bit harder. He's also jumping out of his shoes. I checked some splits. Mondesi's switch hitting. He hit about 270 versus both sides of the plates. So he's less of a risk to get platooned. But you got Dahl struggling with lefties a little bit. This was the part that freaked me out. Baseball Savant is saying Mondesi's hard hit is 35%. Fangraphs is calling it 43%. This is a huge difference. David Dahl is 37 on Savant, 38 on Fangraphs. So that's not, I can take that. But Mondesi, all of a sudden got two different hitters. I'm not sure who to trust exactly. My end understanding is that Mondesi is a slightly better hitter. his chase rates. Like when I saw Dahl, if he's chasing 40% outside the zone, that starts to be like prohibitory. No, you can't swing that much. You're a strikeout disaster swinging that much. Mondesi's just a little down, 37, and Mondesi has shown some better contact rates in the past, so I do think he can get better. And the whole reason I said this is because sometimes guys will refer to plate discipline and then just say their K percentage and their walk percentage. Mondesi's K percentage and his walk percentage, 4 and 26. Dahl's 7 and 25. And by that's an over metric. That's not the underlying metric of the plate discipline. So you got to go in. You got to see that Dahl's going to chase a little bit more, but he can get some of that a little bit more. Mondesi's a little sweeter to the ball. Just something to look at. And so it pushed me down another rabbit hole. Why am I getting different numbers? Why am I getting different things? So I'm just going to give you a little bit more, a little nugget. Baseball Info Solutions, BIS. This must be lasers around the fields, lasers and, different tracking information versus Pitch FX. Pitch FX is another system that they're putting in. I don't know, I think Amazon Web Services is involved. And so these two systems are grabbing different numbers, slightly different. PitchFX is trying to bring in some human identification and modify, certain balls that were flared or adding in different pitch understanding. And so when you're in your Fangraphs, at least, you'll get plate discipline, which is BIS, and then you'll get pitch info, plate discipline, which is PitchFX. I think Baseball Savant is all PitchFX. I got to double check, but so there's some little discrepancies in there. The whole goal here is for us to get a little bit of an edge, to figure out the numbers, to be able to predict a little bit better going into the next season. I wanted to just clarify some of those things for you as you're doing your work. So I'm going to be involved in this deep league snake. It's going to be a 16-team snake with deeper rosters, 5 outfielders, corner and middle. So I had to get a little prepared. I had to go a little deeper on my list. I don't want to start adding the entire league. I don't want to add the whole league. I had a couple hundred players. They're well sorted, but let me just pull up some later stuff that I can deal with. Are there any pitchers I can deal with? And these really aren't going to be breakout players, but I'm going to need someone to be my 5th outfielder, or I might need my 8th pitcher. So I'm looking at some of these deeper league things. I want to give you 2 tools. It took me a little while to get to these tools. If you want to just nerd out, and I'll admit I don't use this that much, but brooksbaseball.com, that's the home of the PitchFX tool. There is so much information in Brooks Baseball. I haven't cited it yet. I feel like it's a little cumbersome. It's so granular. It's, I guess the term is diminishing returns. Like if I didn't have enough to deal with between Baseball Savant and Fangraphs, I could go into Brooks Baseball and analyze every single pitch a guy has thrown, or different swinging strike rates on certain pitches. That can all be found in Brooks Baseball, so you got that out there keeping you busy. And I'll add in another source I like to use, fantasypros.com. Fantasy Pros. They've got really good rankings. They're doing this expert consensus ranking. I like them on multiple sports. Pretty robust site, articles, etc. But they have a mock draft in there. They have a mock draft tool. And I think I've even registered an email so that I can get mock draft analysis. No fee included. But this mock draft tool, it is fast. You can turn over mocks. The real main thing for me is you can set the roster sizes. So I can say it's a 16-team league and we have 5 outfielders and corners and middles and how the pitching works. And then it just drafts against you. So as opposed to waiting for mocks or, CBS Sports mocks, you can just mock against this thing aggressively. And that'll kind of show you the flow. So when you're getting ready for your snakes, how deep do you have to go? Did you get to a sticky point and you had a tough time making a decision? Go back and analyze some of those players. And for me, it was, well, how deep? What was I left with for getting ready for this 16-team league? That forced me to go a little bit deeper. Hopefully you like those tools. Let me just quick touch on some players. We're going to do a little bit of player analysis as usual. On some of the late stuff that I just wanted to be aware of. Again, I'm not loving any of these guys. This is just stuff I can deal with late. I got to mention Cole Hamels. Cole Hamels is just a journeyman. He's thrown a 92-mile-an-hour fastball. his entire career. It hasn't moved, it hasn't dropped. We know that the changeup is really dirty. The key on the changeup, you need a 10-mile-an-hour speed separation. If you're throwing a 93-mile-an-hour fastball, you got to get that change down to 83. You're looking for that gap. And what I found with Cole, he went from he has a 92-mile-an-hour fastball. He got his change down to 83. He took a little off the change. So Cole's going to be good again. He's kind of my journeyman of the day. I know that he's going fairly cheap. If I'm passing on aces and accumulating bats, I think you can be okay popping Cole, around 120 players, 140 players. I thought he was worth mentioning as just a veteran grinder. A couple late arms first I pushed up here. Zach Godley, maybe give that a shot. Dylan Bundy, Boyd, we're going to get back into some of that. Luis Gohara from Atlanta, you got to think more about Julio Urias, who the Dodgers want to start, especially with the news relating to Clayton Kershaw. I think Derek Holland, the old man from Texas, he's now in San Francisco. He can throw it around a little bit. Teheran, Keuchel, Hendricks and Lester, these guys are all late. I got some veterans, Lance Lynn, Jimmy Nelson, okay. Trevor Williams. Just some late youngsters that occasionally get strikeouts. Newcomb, Junis. I got Odorizzi I pushed up a little bit. And we're trying to get deep and just things I can tolerate. Luke Weaver maybe bounces back post-hype. Tuki Toussaint. I talk a lot about Rodon. I like Derek Rodriguez for the mound presence. Garrett Richards. Merrill Kelly, a rookie coming over from Japan. Fulmer, maybe. Velasquez of Philly, maybe getting some of that Philly boost. Urena throws hard. We got to be down on Soroka. Those are some of my late arms I just wanted to mention to you guys. Obviously, a lot of focus into SP and outfield. In the outfield, we had already bumped up some guys. I'm really starting to like Renfroe and Grichuk. I need cheap power late. Those are my guys. But I stayed alive with another San Diego player, Franmil Reyes. Maybe a Jacques Peterson. Grichuk, obviously. Dickerson's serviceable. Jay Bruce is serviceable. Here's the little cluster of outfielders I could deal with late. Teoscar Hernandez. Obviously, Franchi Cordero, who we talked about with the speed. Soler, Meadows, Bradley Jr., Avisail Garcia, and Schebler. These are some things I'm okay with late. Coming across the infield here, I'll go touch on some third basemen. Brett Anderson in Miami, bad park, bad lineup, only player on the team. He could be serviceable. Colin Moran, Maikel Franco. He's just people so down on Franco. Maybe Bryce comes up and gives him some tips. Maybe because he's batting 7th all season, he got basically pushed out of the order. Maybe he starts to hit again. Franco's young enough. He can be okay. Is it Jung-Ho Kang? Kang of Pittsburgh? He's got a little game to him. He's trying to make amends for some of that legal jeopardy he got himself into in the international scene. Matt Duffy, I like Cozart, maybe even a Kyle Seager or a Healy, some late third base. Shortstop, we talked about a lot of these guys. I'll deal with Chris Taylor again, even though I really am disgusted with him from last season. Andrus, my other guys there are Semien, Diaz. I've got a couple more for you coming across to the 2B. I think you got to push Tatis Jr. up. I think that it's getting a little warmer and the hype, and they might need him. Second base, Dozier and Gordon, two guys I don't want. Gurriel Jr., Ketel Marte, yes. Lowry, LeMahieu, yes, I think so. Cesar Hernandez, whether he bats 9th or 1st, he's a pretty good little hitter. McNeil of the Mets, Jonathan Scope. Don't forget Scott Kingery, who everyone's down on. One more shortstop for you. Run Tulowitzki out there for a little bit. Run out old Tulo. You know how much we used to love him. Don't just discard him in the trash right now. On the first base front, we got Eric Hosmer, Zimmerman, Jose Martinez. They're up. They're up a little bit as offensive tools. The first baseman behind that, when you're looking to fill out the utility or maybe a corner infielder, I like Bohr at the Angels. Watch out for that. Bell and Belt. Tyler White. These are kind of your late first base. You'll be okay with a Yonder Alonso, Smoke, Bowers. Those are just some of my little hitters to kind of just push up a little bit and be aware of. So when you're just looking, you're like, oh my God, I don't know anybody in these late drafts. Those guys will treat you okay. So I just got to talk. Let me see how much time we have here. We got a couple more minutes. I'll fire some little things out there for you. We got Sporer. Someone asked Paul Sporer about who would he rather have, Lucchesi or Pivetta? And there was some money involved, and he said he'd rather have Lucchesi because Pivetta was $5 more expensive. Just stop with that individual dollar talk. It's really not about the exact dollar. It's about getting your player. It's about being able to push guys around and have a structure to get your player. In an auction, you can avoid mistakes. You don't have to wait. You don't have to miss out on a guy because of where you are positioned in the snake. You can get who you want. So just be a better player. But for $5, no, $5 does not make the difference. I'm constantly bidding $5 up for players that I want. $5 is nothing to me. If you finish the draft with $15, did you need to get off of somebody at 33 because you thought they were worth 31 and you finished the auction with $15? No, that's ridiculous. So just the $5 talk, be okay to spend. There really isn't a magic number. I mean, I talked about it with Andujar. I thought he was 12. He went for 20. Okay, 8. That's almost double the price. I didn't want to pay double. But if it's an expensive player, look at the percentage. I don't think $5 is a reason to get off somebody. If you leave the draft with cash, you probably shouldn't have gotten off anyone. You probably should have gone a little bit harder on all the players you wanted. And just some spring training advice. It's tempting. You got spring training coming out. You got Byron Buxton hitting home runs. You got guys pitching. Don't freak out on spring training numbers. Don't be taking spring training guys after 1 or 2 days and just firing them up your list. Make sure that you keep that top 100 intact. You can massage it a little bit. You can highlight a guy and move him up, but he doesn't go from 160 to 60 off of a couple spring training games. Stay off of that hitting stuff. Stay off of those home runs because pitchers are working on stuff. Their velo's not up yet. They might be working on a pitch, and they're just tossing it over the plate. And guys are hitting home runs. This is not the regular season. Guys aren't all pumped up. So that's one reason not to overreact. What you can react to in preseason, pitching velocity. We'll definitely be watching velos. I don't want to see velos down. I want to see velos upticking. That's one thing to pay attention to. And the other thing, obviously, be a doctor. We got to be a doctor all preseason long, all season long. Pay attention to health. Kershaw may not start the season because of shoulder inflammation. That's not good. That doesn't give me confidence that I'm going to be able to pay for Kershaw. I'm not even sure how cheap Kershaw would have to go for him to be worth it with shoulder inflammation and a history of back problems and that he's basically fallen apart. Josh James is already down. Josh James is already hurt. He did a quad. Do I think you should hold Josh James at this point? Your 8th starter, a flyer that we took? No, I don't think so. I already whacked him in a league for Ohtani the batter. I'm ruthless on the waiver wire. My leash is so short because I need players that are going to contribute. Of course, when Josh James gets right and he gets his rotation spot back, I'm there immediately. I might be there at the first even sound that I get that he's warming back up to get right. But no, I'm concerned about that. Folty, who I liked, Folty's elbow's sore. I told you guys, you can't live at 99. You can't live at 100. Things are going to start to go. So here's Folty throwing 99. His elbow's sore. What's he going to have to do? He's going to have to back off. So now he can't ramp up. Well, what happens the next time he ramps up? Do you think his elbow's better in 3 weeks? You think, 99's better now. I just needed a quick rest. I don't know about that. I don't know. You're going to have to be a doctor a little bit. Salvador Perez, he's gone. He's just gone. There's a catcher gone. Sorry to the guys that drafted him early. Told you he was a little banged up last season. Kimbrel is like a shark in the water. He's just lurking out there. He's just lurking. And he's going to come steal a closer job. So while you want to pay up for closers, maybe you don't want it to be the Washington closers. Now you threw a little cold water on my Doolittle purchases. But Kimbrel's out there. He's a threat to some closer somewhere whose job he's just going to steal at any time. And here's a player you got to get onto your list. If you're done with your Josh James, you're frustrated, I got a new guy. I've never even mentioned him. So I've got to keep listening to my pods. Even though they frustrate me, I'll keep listening. Chris Paddock of San Diego. Paddac, San Diego. Apparently he's throwing fire. He's got a Bugs Bunny changeup that nobody can mess with. He might be getting called up sooner than later. You got to keep Chris Paddock in mind. You got to start stashing him on benches. He's not at the Forrest Whitley level, but he's probably back behind there. You're looking at a Luzardo type guy. You're okay there with some Chris Paddock. You know, I've got to keep dialing into the pods. I'm gonna play us out on one little snippet, but I've got to listen to the pods. And even though I'm like, oh man, and I want to comment, I want to tweet it, guys. There's a little bit of information. You know, I found out I'm just deep in a pod. Bauer added a changeup. And he was joking with a hitter like, oh, no, you can't hit this at all. You have no chance. So Bauer is an ace. If it's an auction, I'm constantly buying that. If he added a pitch, I mean, this kid is a nerdy pitching savant. And if he added a pitch, if he's 4-pitch mix, 5, I don't know what he's got. I love hearing stuff like that. Here's one little snippet. I got to shout out who it is. This is Friends with Fantasy Benefits. It's a podcast. You know, Justin Mason, who I do talk a lot of trash about, he's out there. They're doing the TGFBI. It's a big fantasy baseball tournament. FWFB is his pod. And I just had to play this little snippet for you because it made me laugh so hard. I don't know who this was, but it's just some commentator. See if you can hear this. Look at that. It's not going to play for me. Wonderful.
Is really smart, and one of the things I've been trying to do is kind of not necessarily ignore ADP, but kind of ignore ADP, because if you don't want to sit there and just hope a guy's going to make it back to you when you really want that player and you think that they're worth the pick that you're at. Just take the guy that you want at that spot. Don't worry about the ADP. So I jumped.
Don't worry about the ADP. Ignore ADP. Work on your list. Figure out who the better players are and adjust them accordingly, and ignore ADP and draft aggressively based on your list. You know how to do this. ADP min pick creep problems. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at min pick and they're saying, oh, I want this guy. I'm just going to jump the min pick. And they're just min pick. It's just out of control. Get your sleepers, then run back through and get all the value that dropped. That's how I'm going for it. Big shout out to all the subscribers, the new subscribers, the old. You guys are hitting me up. I love it. I'm coming back for more. I was traveling. You see me back in my usual setting, so we got to get some drafts going. Look for March 16th for our auction league. March 16th. Just dropping a little seed. Keep it locked. You guys are the best.